afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to have all of you here. And thanks, Professor Jenny Stephens, for being here. And thanks for diving deep into the social, political, and economical sides of the renewable energy. So your research is really impressive and showing us how universities can lead the transformation that benefit all of us and all our society. So here in Catalonia, with the Government of Catalonia, we are developing the program. It's called Regions of Knowledge, that is aiming to articulate all the 12 universities and 42 research centers here in Catalonia to develop research and innovation on a collaborative manner together with industry, public administration, and civil society. In fact, the main aim is to respond to the major challenge about our regions. And this program is done with collaboration with the initiative CEST, led by Tatiana Fernandez at the Department of Economics, with the objective to direct all this effort towards the major transition our society needs to transform our current models in areas as energy, mobility, industry, education, culture, food, and doing on an orchestrated and systemic manner. Thanks, Jenny, for inspiring us to make our higher education system a key player in shaping a fair, green, digital, and resilient world. We cannot wait more to hear you and your experience in this area. But before that, let me introduce Sandra Boni, who will explain more the dynamics of the seminar and how we'll introduce formally the speaker of today. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Nuria, and thanks, Jenny, to be here with us. This is our fourth seminar in this group of seminar about how university can contribute to these transformations. And well, we are really happy to have here Jenny Stephens, who is a Dean's Professor of Sustainability Science and Policy at Northeastern University in Boston, if I'm correct. And before being in Northeastern, she taught in Vermont, Clark, Tufts, and the MIT. So I think the interesting profile that you have, Jenny, is combine all your expertise and knowledge about energy transitions, particularly, energy democracy, energy justice, and the role of a university. So we are really looking forward to listen more from your experience, from your side, and especially on the book you are going to publish at the end of the year about climate justice and the university shaping of a hopeful future for all. So the floor is yours. You will have 30 minutes, more or less, a little bit more if you want, and then we will have a question and answer from all of us through the chat, or even talking to you if it's appropriate. Okay, so thanks again, and looking forward.
Yeah, thank you. And is my audio okay? Everyone can hear? Yeah. Okay, let me share the screen here. And thank you so much for inviting me. And okay, so what I'd like to do is introduce some ideas about how we think about universities and the power of universities for transformation. And I've been working in universities my whole career. And so I'm almost 50 now, so 30 years or so in different universities, public universities, private universities, and mostly in the US context. But I've also traveled quite a bit and collaborate with people in different parts of the world. So my perspective, and you'll see, is definitely more from US experience. But I think a lot of the trends in higher education that are happening in the United States are also happening in other places. The United States is definitely more financialized and privatized and corporatized. So in that sense, you will see that like you're probably in your context not as
financialized as we are, with debt and all this crazy expenses and lack of public funding. So there is some different context, but I think some of the same ideas are really important and relevant around the world in universities. So I hope to catalyze, new discussion and ways of thinking about how we can leverage universities for bigger transformation that is so urgently needed. So with that, I propose this idea of climate justice universities, which is like reimagining a different kind of university. And the reason I use this new phrase, like climate justice universities, is to acknowledge there are no universities right now that I know of that are doing and structured and engaging with society in the way that I'm imagining we could, So that's why instead of pointing or examples of different universities, that's not what I'm doing here. What I'm doing is like using our imagination to think what is possible. Like we're very used to thinking about our existing system and structures, but we need, because of this situation the world is in and humanity is in, and the planetary ecological destruction, we need to think differently, right? So we have to think beyond. So the whole premise of the conversation I'd love to have with all of you today is that, we can't just think of our current system, right? We have to think outside. So that's kind of the goal. And I want to just introduce myself briefly so you know who I am. I was born in Ireland, in Dublin, so I am actually European. But my family moved to Boston area when I was 8 years old, so I was a child. And I always was interested in environment, and I studied environmental science and policy in the 1990s at Harvard University. Then I went to California and I studied environmental science and engineering, very technical, and I did research on water and soil and carbon, kind of environmental chemistry more than anything else. Then I knew I wanted to get back to social science and policy, more applied. So I then did like energy technology innovation policy. Then I was a professor at Clark University, which is outside of Boston. Then I taught at Vermont, which is north of Boston. Then I came to Northeastern 8 years ago, I guess now. Then last year I did a sabbatical back in Ireland. And then this year I am back in Boston and also at Harvard, where I'm a climate justice fellow. And then next year, starting in June, actually, I'm going to be professor of climate justice back in Ireland. I'm moving to Maynooth University, which is where the Irish Climate Research Center is. So I'm going to be focused on climate justice in an Irish context, a smaller country where I hope to be able to have more impact in policy. So what I'm going to do is just share some of the ideas in my forthcoming book. So both, and it's coming out at the end of the year. And again, my goal with this book is to just catalyze new ways of thinking about our universities and the power that they have for transformation. Because obviously a lot of our universities are structured to kind of maintain a status quo, in a sense, of just doing the same thing and having this canon of knowledge that you're supposed to be teaching, and it's kind of not necessarily very forward thinking of what the very dynamic changing needs of humanity are. So I begin by saying, like, we're in a poly crisis. I'm sure all of you know so many different crises, right? It's not just climate change, but mental health crisis, housing crisis, food crises. And I know these are different in different contexts, but like there's a sense globally and, in communities around the world of financial, economic precarity, biodiversity, plastics, war and
horrible genocide, and and on top of that we have the climate crisis, right, which just is exacerbating all the other things, and our inability to adequately respond to the climate crisis despite the science has to do with all of these social structures, right, and economic structures. So we have all kinds of goals for environment and sustainability, and we're not meeting them at all. And the fossil fuel companies have no plans to stop their extraction and exploration of fossil fuels. So we're really going in the wrong direction on so many levels. So the question is, like, why are we so ineffective? And and I think a lot of us are recognizing that it has to do with our economic systems, right, that are concentrating wealth and power. And let's see here. And sorry, something happened here. And one of the concept that I've been very influenced by is this wealth supremacy, which is a concept of increasingly a lot of policies. And, again, this is in the United States in particular, but again, happening all over the world. There's policies and our structures, everything a lot of things have been prioritized for the wealthy, like the wealthy get all the benefits, right? And most people are excluded. And it's getting worse, like in terms of these kinds of structural things. And it's also related to fossil fuels and our continued reliance on fossil fuels. And this is where the energy and energy democracy ideas come in, because the concentration of wealth and power is connected to the fossil fuel reliance, and because fossil fuels are these multinational companies and governments that rely on the income from fossil fuel profits are perpetuating the systems and ignoring and not responding to all the climate destruction and other ecological and human devastation. So my view, and I think more and more people around the world are recognizing we need like a bigger paradigm shift, right, in how we think about the world. And there are a lot of paradigm shift, transition, language, well-being, economy, all kinds of different. And I've suggesting climate justice as the frame because of the urgency of climate and the fast pace that climate is changing, that it adds, it's hard to ignore or say, oh, it's always been this way. If you focus on other framings for transformation, people can say, oh, it's always been this way, or the inequalities have always been there, or poverty has always been there. But climate, if you focus on climate, it hasn't always been this way, right? And it's changing so fast. So that's why I propose climate justice as like the framing for imagining a very, very different future. So from a climate justice perspective, we often can think that we recognize that climate change is actually not the problem, but it's a horrible symptom, right, of an economic system that is extractive and exploitative. And until we change that system, all our attempts to address the climate crisis are not going to be effective. So if you think about climate justice as the lens, then you can connect that with social justice and economic justice and racial justice. So how we respond to the climate crisis is an opportunity for radical transformation in all of these other ways in our society, to again move toward a safer, healthier, more stable future. And so one kind of important piece of this climate justice framing is to resist what I call climate isolationism, which is how a lot of the mainstream and a lot of the university work on climate change talks about climate change in a very technocratic, greenhouse gas emission reduction, energy system transition, but with a very technocratic way of thinking about it, not in terms of economic or social justice way of thinking about it. So I think we have to acknowledge that climate isolationism view so that we can move toward a more climate justice framework. So climate isolationism in the universities, how it manifests is a lot of our universities are, focused on individual behavior rather than collective and systems change. There's a lot more focus on technological innovation, right? Which of course, technological innovation is very important, but we spend less time doing research and teaching our students about social innovation. A lot of the focus in climate isolationism is about profits, right? Like, oh, we can have all these solar companies and electric vehicle companies and people can make money off it. Rather than thinking about, transitioning to a very different mindset of sufficiency. Like we don't need to why make all this money if everyone's miserable and ecological destruction, right? Like, why do we need always more and more profit? Instead of kind of concentrating wealth and power, distributing wealth and power as a primary goal of any climate action could be possible in a climate justice frame. And instead of always focusing on innovation, innovation is great, of course, but we need to pay also attention to exnovation. And exnovation means intentionally stopping doing the things and using the products and, the systems and policies, stop doing the things that we know are bad, right? They're not, and the problem with, we always focus on innovation, especially in our universities and in our organizations and businesses, and the assumption is coming up with new ideas will be better and it will displace and substitute away from the old ideas. But what we are seeing, particularly if you look at energy, is that in a global scale, coming up with the new ideas has not led globally to stopping using the old, right? Obviously, renewable energy can and does displace fossil fuels in some specific places and contexts and some scales. But overall, there's been, a lot of new renewable energy deployment, but we are globally as reliant or more on fossil fuels than we've ever been, and it keeps going up, right? So we haven't focused on exnovating away from fossil fuel reliance. And so from a climate justice perspective, we have to change that and focus on exnovation of the energy, old energy systems. And that concept of exnovation holds for other things as well as fossil fuels. So obviously, the idea of climate justice is inherently transformative. And when we are talking about transformation, it involves clearly disrupting the power structures. And this is where it's really important to think about universities, because universities offer legitimacy, all kinds of knowledge creation, knowledge hierarchies, knowledge, all kinds of ways to kind of set the agenda for society is happening in our universities. So this idea of disrupting power and thinking about transformation and climate justice in our universities is, not easily done because of the way universities historically have been places where that are supported by and catered to, in some instances, the people who are the most powerful, right? So disrupting those power dynamics is not always easy in universities. So, oh, here I just mentioned my 2020 book was called Diversifying Power, Why We Need Anti-Racist Feminist Leadership on Climate and Energy. And I mentioned that just because that book focuses on like how we need change and different people involved and different ways of thinking that are explicitly thinking about power dynamics and the disruption of power in order to address the energy and climate challenges ahead of us. So let's see. So yeah, I mentioned that I bring a feminist, anti-colonial, and anti-racist perspective. And when I say that, all I mean is centering justice and equity and power, thinking about power in all of these issues, which so much of the climate and energy work does not think about the power imbalances or justice issues. And the assumption is kind of often in our energy work in particular, you know, thoughts like little consideration, I guess, to equity and justice issues. Okay. Sorry, somehow it's not. Oh, there we go. Oops. Sorry, something's happening with my computer here. Okay, so the book I'm writing is I've written, and it's coming out soon, is part of this critical university studies, which is an area of new scholarship, I guess, like thinking about the role of universities in a more critical way, and obviously critical thinking and questioning you know, the assumptions that we have about our institutions is very important. Sorry. Okay, so when we think about higher education institutions, the framework I use is to think about knowledge, wealth, and power. And so in the book, I have a section talking about teaching and learning and how knowledge, you know, how we can think differently about how we teach and learn, and also how we think about unlearning the things that, you know, are not helpful to be in the current context. And then research is also part of the knowledge. When we think about power, we really need to think about relationships and relationships with universities and non-academic actors and communities in particular. And then with regard to wealth, obviously the financial flows of how universities are funded and who is controlling or influencing how the universities, what we're focusing on in our universities. And so I think it's important to, when we think about the role of higher education and transformation, to recognize that there's this complex and the relationship between knowledge, wealth, and power that universities get kind of are in the middle of this, and they have a role to play, and they can be manipulated is the right word, but you know, they can be leveraged for different interests, obviously. So, and fossil fuels is in the United States, at least, and in many other countries, fossil fuel industry has invested strategically in universities for decades as part of their effort to legitimize continued reliance on fossil fuels. So it's important to kind of acknowledge that, and several people, including myself and other colleagues, are exploring and revealing the extent to which the fossil fuel industry has been influencing universities. So the other thing I wanted to acknowledge is knowledge hierarchies, because what universities do is kind of decide which knowledge is most important, like what should we be teaching our students? And when we do that, we exclude other kinds of knowledge, right? And some of the kinds of knowledge that are systemically excluded historically in universities is relational knowledge, like how we connect with each other and with the non-human world, like with nature. Embodied knowledge, how we connect, how we feel and how our bodies tell us things about the world. Often we focus on our head, right? Like what we're thinking, but not the rest of our body in a lot of universities. And also local knowledge is often excluded, right? Because it's thought of there's some universal knowledge that people should learn in universities, but it's very oftentimes, very Eurocentric, colonial, who have a lot of history into how universities are organized, the disciplines, and then the way there's epistemological kind of hierarchy. So one idea that I talk about in the book is having universities be more locally focused with kind of global solidarity. Vandana Shiva has suggested this idea of grandmothers' universities, right? So that every community has some kind of a knowledge institution, organization that provides a place for local knowledge to be shared and passed on. It speaks to the most of our universities are the opposite of that, right? They're male dominated, oftentimes with these ideas of kind of colonial ideas about what's the knowledge that should be taught in our universities. And so one idea that I also have put forth in terms of community engagement and geographic distribution is, what if our universities were more like public libraries, that were more accessible, and every community would have access or a relationship with some university. What if our universities were not all concentrated in this major cities, but like they all had more geographic distribution and commitment to co-designing, co-creating research and learning experiences for everyone, right? Not just this elite, kind of very hard to get into, hard to access idea of what a university could be. Another concept that I wanted to talk about is unlearning. So I mentioned a little bit already exnovation, but I also want to focus on this idea of unlearning. And obviously, anytime you put a negative like un or exnovation, it's kind of provocative in a sense. But I think we are at a place that it's really important to acknowledge what knowledge frameworks that are mainstream, that are being taught to students every day, are really not helpful, and we actually need to focus on unlearning them. So, growth in neoliberal economics is a fundamental kind of assumption, and in many of our political landscapes as well, the assumption of constant growth. And we know that's completely impossible. There's no way. And it's causing all kinds of, the focus on trying always to grow is causing, is the cause of a lot of the climate destruction and ecological destruction and human suffering around the world. So, economics is one specific place where we need to have much more diversity in how economics is taught. And when students and universities are only teaching students this very neoliberal, narrow perspective of mainstream economics that perpetuates growth without even considering the planetary health or ecological limits. You know, we are, as the president of Ireland has said, we are, it's an injustice to our students, really. And it's a narrow, distorted kind of education that we are providing. So that's one example of kind of unlearning. And so unlearning economics, I guess, is one area that I think universities really need to be thinking about. And I already mentioned the concept of exnovation, but I did just want to say, in addition, you know, give another example here for exnovation. In addition to fossil fuel phase out, which I've been studying energy in universities, and there are very few energy research programs where fossil fuel phase out is the goal, right? Emission reductions is usually the goal, or you know, some are looking at all different technologies for capturing CO2 or all kinds of different things going on. And renewable energy, of course, a lot of good research on renewable energy, but we need more research on how to phase out fossil fuels, right? Which could be #1 priority in our universities on energy, but it isn't. You know, that is a problem. But plastics is another example. So plastics, we know now, the science shows that plastics are in our blood, in breast milk that babies are drinking. Like, there's plastic infiltrating the environment everywhere, yet we do not have university programs or research focus on how to stop using plastics. In fact, you know, plastics are the companies are coming up with more and more reasons to use plastic, right? And obviously it's very convenient, but there are alternatives, right? If we committed, and it's not just the technical alternatives, finding out other materials, but also the social and economic changes, innovations, financial innovations that are needed to move us away from plastic reliance. So those are just a few examples of exnovation. So I just want to stop and just check on the time. How much longer would you like me to speak versus opening it up? Because I'm also really looking forward to discussion with everyone.
If you want to talk a little bit more, it's okay. Or if you want to stop, it's also okay.
Okay.
Up to you. You want to explain something more, or we go to the...
Yeah, maybe I'll just go through a few more, okay. A few more ideas, but maybe I'll go through some of these quickly so we can stop and have discussion. Okay, I think I'm not going to talk about this one because this is solar geoengineering. I'll just say, is this technical fix for climate change? Which is about engineering the climate. And this is, I think, the wrong thing that universities should not be working on. But this is where there's debate about how to decide if there's a lot of money for a specific technological approach to climate. How does a university decide not to study it, right? So this is an example of a controversial issue that I think, you know, researchers have to engage with. But I would say it's also an example to highlight how, you know, when we don't have principles of climate justice, the kinds of ideas that can be legitimized and promoted and advanced that I think are actually quite dangerous because they just focus on the technological and not on the social and justice perspectives. So just to point out here that, like, who funds research does really matter. Let's see. And I guess the last point I'll make, and then we can stop, is about the financial model of universities and where the money comes from, who's supporting the universities, and
Jenny?
Yeah, we lost you.
I'm afraid she ran out of battery. Her laptop. She will be back. I take the opportunity to ask the audience both your questions and through the Q&A tool, if you like, or if you don't find this tool and you're not comfortable with it, you can also write them down on the chat.
I think for the questions, let's wait to Jenny to come back. It's okay? And then open the door for the floor for questions. Ferran, is Jenny there or not yet?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay. Well, if
She's
Renuka, if you want to say something, it's about what you post on the
Jennifer
chat.
is back. Jenny is back. Please ask her again.
Okay.
Jenny's US iPhone.
Oh, sorry, I'm
See.
here. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. My computer
Collapsed.
died.
Okay, no problem, Jenny.
Sorry. So I think it's a good time to end anyway. I think I was wrapping up, and those are some of the big ideas. And I'd love to hear what other people questions and discussion and
Okay.
what all of you are working on. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if I can see the question and answer, Ferran, but if anyone has posed some question, please let me know and we can tell to
Yes.
Jenny. There is
For
any
now,
question
there are
from-
none.
No.
No questions there.
Okay, Renuka, you want to intervene?
Yes, thank you very much. It's not type of question, but again, it is a question to everyone. And thank you very much, Jenny. I started late, but I did hear very good points made by you, and I appreciate that you have made it. So there are a few things like, what I find there's a big divide between industry. Big divide between the industry, community, and academics. What community want, they are not able to communicate to the industry. Yes, at some point they do, like, for example, do we want organic products or not? Or do we want EV cars or not? Some at a very low level that has been communicated. However, they have not been able to communicate because the masses are not so educated. At the same time, in the academics, what happens that they hardly go to communities to communicate their research or the latest finding or what is right or wrong. We all debate within the academic atmosphere and like maybe we have gone into interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary, but we haven't gone to transdisciplinarity area where we communicate too much or frequently to the community. And that is, again, I think, a fault of academics. Again, there is a big divide between academics and industry that, as rightly pointed here, that they work out for the phase out. They want to phase out and they express, like, not absolutely 100%, but they do express their intention to phase out and go back to, like, go more and more on the renewable energy or alternatives that can serve the society very well against climate change and climate change. However, how many academics and industry communicate, collaborate for research and development? Because they take research on their own and they come up with their ideas, and these are actually studied by the academics after 2 or 3 years, because there's always a gap. And then this literature again go back to the community when it comes through, like IPCC report and so on. IPCC report are also based on the literature which is 10 years ago, like they all study the literature. They study the literature. They do not study the current or forecasting, right? So these are few problems that, we are having a disconnect between everyone. Again, the educational policies are such bad that they pressure the lecturers or the academics to give out lectures, and they are so much like time taking and all that they hardly change their lectures in 5 or 10 years time. They do not get time for research and bring that new knowledge to the student, and then that student can be like when they go out of the educational system for the workforce, they are still like 10 years or 20 years old model coming out of the university. They hardly get time to, be in business environment or the workplace environment, that what is really needed. And so there are many disconnects.
Any particular question to Jenny, or just a comment on that side?
Yes. So the question is that how we can then diminish these gaps. Certainly what you have identified, you can go out of that atmosphere, and then only you can identify within your system. You are always worried about your living or your objectives, that is daily objectives, and you don't fulfill the need of such innovative idea. So how?
Okay, let's pose this question to Jenny.
So I think
on the comments that you mentioned.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think this is a. Can you hear? Yes.
Yes, I can hear.
Yeah. Okay. This is exactly kind of why I'm putting out these ideas that are not aligned with current reality on the ground, right? So as I said at the beginning, these ideas are kind of, aspirational, right? We're saying if we want transformation in society, we have to think differently about our universities, and all the problems that you just identified, the time lag, the workforce, people overworked, don't have time to update, don't have time to engage, don't, all kinds of challenges are exactly what I'm responding to in suggesting let's reimagine what's possible. And I don't know how to get there. And I think that's where, each context is different, right? And there are opportunities to move toward some of these things, like more community engaged research, right? Or changing it, moving away from lecture-based learning to more action learning or community engaged learning. So like, there are all examples that many of us have tried and we're doing in a small scale with stuck in the system that we're in. But I think it's also really important and inspiring and give some hope to all of us too, to imagine like, what if we could change the system of higher education so that we were more aligning with overall societal goals, or trying to make the future better for society. Then what would the universities be focusing on? How would we be structuring? How can we reclaim these organizations that are, I think, more important than we always recognize? Like they're more than just places for young people to go and as a step to get to a profession, right? There's like a deeper importance and power that I think universities have that we don't always recognize. And if we did put more attention and realize that, we may be able to change some of these funding issues and the structure and the incentive structure of what we're doing in our university. So thank you for that comment. And I think that's exactly the kinds of challenges that, across the board, people are working with and trying to address, and we fight, one small battle here, one small battle here, and it's, so for some people, a lot of places, it's getting worse and worse every year. So what I'm trying to do is step back and think big and be ambitious and think in an optimistic way. What could we be doing and how? And I don't know how to do it, but I'm just trying to characterize some of the things that we could be thinking differently on. Yeah.
Thank you. Just a last comment that I recognized this 3 years back, and I have started a worldwide network, which is free, online, and transparent to join people together. And I have put the post on my in the chat box, and you can join our network. It is free, and it has plenty of different incentives in a sense of not in a funding, not as a payment, but as to continue on the journey of contributing to the society and sustainable development goals. So have a look.
Thank you, Renuka. Let's give opportunity to others to intervene as well. There is in the question and answer a comment from Antonio Casado. Antonio Casado was one of the former presenters in these seminars, and he said that he finds the concept of ex-innovation difficult to implement in his environment. A medium-sized Spanish university, say, of course, in philosophy or the arts, we might be more experimental and even transgressive. But in general, the pressure is to learn and do, not to unlearn and undo. That's why I tend to use innovation from the global south or frugal innovation instead. Do you think this is a same movie, or should we drop innovation entirely?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. And I don't think we should drop innovation. I think innovation is very, very important. And I think the point of highlighting ex-innovation is more to make a provocative point of like what we're not doing. So I think, again, in different contexts, different words and ideas can have different kinds of impact. So I think it's not saying stop using innovation or and obviously there is more excitement in some you could say with thinking of new things, like, and it's kind of more not as sexy or fun to think how hard it is to stop doing the things that we know we need to stop doing. So of course there's kind of that's part of the push toward innovation over ex-innovation. I raised this idea. I mean, ex-innovation is a word and it is a concept that others have written about, particularly with regard to energy. So it's not a new concept, but I think it's just acknowledging that we need both. For transformation, you need both. You need to focus on the new, but also intentionally letting go of the old that is no longer serving us. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that question, Antonio. Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny. I have a question that's related to the particular program is going on in Catalonia. The idea is to focus on on local challenges. So from the local challenges that can be around energy, health, food, whatever, system, move the university to solve these local challenges together with communities or local administration or whoever is going on the place. So that's more or less the idea of the program. So what do you think from your experience can be the trigger, the focus on the local challenges, a trigger, just to address some of these issues that you mentioned before?
Yeah, so I think it sounds like a very valuable strategy, right? Because it connects the university with the local communities and provides more tangible experiences for students. obviously it matters how it's done, right? Like not the experts coming in and telling the local community what to do with their problems and diagnosing and, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for co-designing research and learning opportunities that are not just for the students, not just for the benefit of the researchers, but also actually having impact, right, in a positive way. But you do have to be careful how to do it, because often in some communities, universities and people in the universities think they're the expert and they tell people, come in and tell people what to do, and that is not going to work well. So I think there needs to be also a shift in not like, oh, the university is helping the community, but like is engaging with non-academic organizations or people, communities, for a reciprocal relationship, right? And an opportunity to have some synergies, but you have to be careful not to do it in an extractive and exploitative way. And I think, in my experience, I've seen quite a lot of community engaged research, community engaged teaching, where it is kind of extractive and exploitative. The community doesn't get as much out of it as the students and the professors, right? So I think there is a caution there. But I do think that the idea of focusing locally and then connecting with global solidarity, like the same problems are happening in other contexts around the world. So when students can work on local problems, but then also read and learn and connect with how those same issues are evolving, emerging, being dealt with in other parts of the world, it can also create this local and global connection. So I think that's another important way to frame the focus on local, as local experience and making connections and relationships, but then also recognizing that connecting that with global connectivity and solidarity.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jenny. There is a question from Ingrid Vives, and she said, are the different physical locations, different faculties, offices, labs, a barrier to implement climate justice universities? Should universities move their arena of action outside their buildings?
Yeah, so yes, definitely. I mean, the physical infrastructure is a challenge, right? And this is the vision of having more distributed institutions that may have multiple campuses or have, parts of the university in different places, is practically and physically and infrastructurally challenging. Yes, of course. And so I think one of the ways to think about it in this reimagining what could be possible is thinking about, especially with climate disruptions of all kinds that are impacting communities in new ways, and people don't know like how to respond, how to prepare, how to, people need new resources, communities need new resources. What if we thought of the universities and investing in local, smaller scale infrastructure, thought of the universities as critical infrastructure for climate adaptation and climate resilience, if you like to use that word, like thinking about how university infrastructure could be part of larger investments that are needed in communities around the world as to respond to reduce vulnerabilities and be able to better respond to very more disruptive and intense climatic events and other kinds of disruptions that are associated with a more turbulent and unstable world. So if you think about it in that way, like there are all these new problems, new expenses, new investments are needed if we want to have people and communities being more less vulnerable in the future. Then we need to make new investments, and maybe universities or this new vision of an engaged, community-centered university could be part of that investment.
There is another question in the Q&A about from Cynthia, and she said, I found interesting what you are pointing out with regard the narratives on climate research and teaching contents. So my question is, how do you imagine putting this in practice about teaching and research?
Yeah, in my own teaching and research, I had now embraced this climate justice framework. And most of my colleagues who study energy and climate, don't do that, or sustainability, like the mainstream environmental, energy, climate, sustainability, justice is not the focus, right? And only now it's starting to be more. But most people still think of it as like added on later, like, oh, we have to figure out everything. And then, oh yeah, equity and justice is important. What I'm proposing is you put that at the center. And what I find is with students, it makes so much sense and they get it. And it's, it's easy to implement. I think the challenge, lots of challenges, of course. The research funding, most researchers follow the money, right? So we have to respond to a call for proposals on a certain topic or in a certain area, and a lot of that is decided outside the university by the government programs or the private sector or philanthropy, foundation, rich people's priorities. Like there's a lot of different. So that is a harder thing to change. But again, it's starting to change, I guess. Like people are realizing how all these issues are connected, and that we do need to move beyond just the technological approach to climate. And as other crises that are not directly, people don't think directly related to climate, and then they're seeing, oh, actually food is connected to climate, actually our housing issues are connected to climate, energy, everything is our health is connected to the climate. Like, as people are starting to experience the connections, I think it can get easier, but I mean, again, these questions of like how to change are, part of it is just talking about it and trying things out and proposing up to your colleagues and to your peers and to your, as I said, the students are the easiest ones to, because they see a lot of the connections that older people who've been in one way of thinking for so long, it's harder to change.
Well, one of the results of this seminar will be a work on different competences that researchers, teachers, students need, to address climate justice or transformation, etc. So, in your perspective, which one can be the essential ones that all the actors participating in this transformation should incorporate?
Wait, say again, which should be the essential?
The essential competences, the essential, not only skills, because it's not only a matter of skills or knowledge, but way of doing, which is a combination of skills, knowledge, etc. Which one could be the more relevant ones to be part of this climate justice university?
Yeah, so I think it is what's missing the most that from our curriculum is this relational knowledge, like thinking about how we're all connected. We all need not just each other to be healthy, but we need the planet to be healthy, or else like it's, you know, the reciprocity and kind of systems thinking that a lot of our disciplinary traditions has ignored and dismissed as not important. I think that's where, that's, I guess if I was to focus in one area, and I don't know if you call that a competency, but I think that is what's missing the most. And it's very, you know, rather, and I think in your context, probably a little bit more a sense of collective, but moving away from this so individualistic, like, oh, it's just about you can do this. And you know, people are so, I find people are so eager for more of a collective vision, a collective action. And so people want that, but the way we teach, a lot of our universities are very much individualistic success, you know, rather than societal success, or, you know, and so I think kind of moving away from that and trying to encourage more of a sense of connection.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, well, I invite people to also to ask questions to be part of the conversation. We have 20 minutes more.
Yeah. And I would also love to learn a little bit more about your organization, what you're all doing. And I know it's too many people to do a full open discussion, but if anyone would like to share some of the things that you're working on and that's connected or related to some of these ideas, would be great.
Okay, so any of you wants to share their experience or what you're doing in your own context?
Sandra, there's a question by Guillermo Palau Salvador, the chat.
Let me go to the chat. I'm there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yes. Yeah, if narrative system thinking and relational learning is scalable, no, to the world universities. That's the question from Guillermo.
Yeah, so this is a great question, and thank you, Guillermo. I think, you know, this is where leadership matters, and so I think it is possible to scale to a whole university, and you know, it's a cultural shift, it's a paradigm shift, and so it depends how open people are to that, right? And in different places, in different contexts, I think it's more or less challenging. You know, in many university, the faculty, you know, ideas don't necessarily get permeated through the senior administration, right? And so I guess it, you know, it depends on the context, but I do think that these kinds of ideas and kind of redefining the university's approach is possible. And again, in the US context, there's so many different universities, small ones, big ones, public, private, and you'll see some that are trying to be kind of different than the others, right? And have a characteristic and a narrative and a approach that is different than others, because it's like a, you know, competition of all these universities and financialized. So, you know, they're doing it to get a competitive edge. But I do think within that context, there's opportunities for some big innovations and ex-novation away from some of the old things. But like all of these, universities are very often, they're called anchor institutions, right? They're old university. I mean, many are old, have a long tradition and convention and legacy, and they're slow to change. And so, yeah, I think, and that's where I think different forms of leadership. And when I say leadership, I don't just mean who's at the top. There's universities are very dynamic with people engaging on different ideas, and so there is opportunity to try to get some of these different approaches scalable throughout the university.
And Jenny, do you think the smaller university or more regional university are better placed because they cannot compete with the big ones, with the big names, with the big universities that are ranked in the first positions? So they are not in this race. They are not good competitors. So do you think for the smaller one, the more regional, the more local ones, it's an opportunity for them to differentiate themselves from the other ones and work for that? Or
Yeah.
depending on...
Yes, no, definitely. I do think, and I think some, there's examples of that happening, and I think there's more, probably we'll see more of that. And again, obviously the different countries, different places, there's different trends, but I do think, in some ways the less prestigious universities can change, have to change more, right? The older, richer, like, well-known, ones that they don't have as much urgency to change and be dynamic, right? Because what they've been doing has worked for so long, they just keep doing it. So yeah, I do think there's different opportunities every university has different legacy, right? And that it builds on, and different communities that it serves or connects with. And so there are opportunities across the board, but I do think that point that the more regional or smaller universities may be more nimble, right, and be more able to adapt and change and try new things.
And examples of this in this American context or in European context?
Yeah, so there's a couple of examples that I can give. One is here in the United States. There's a small university in Maine, which is Northeast. It's by the ocean, and they just offer one major, human ecology. That's all. Every student who goes there, that's all they study. And it's all about this relational knowledge and connecting humans with nature, and there's no other disciplines, like that's all they study. And it's very interesting university. Another example, and this gets to the question about scalability, is in the Netherlands, Drift, which is in University of Rotterdam. They're Dutch Research Institute for Transitions. They were part of the university, but they started doing focus on transitions and doing a lot of community engaged work and getting grants to do more, almost like consulting work, more than research. And the university originally kind of kicked them out and said, this isn't an academic, you go do your own thing. So they're kind of more like a startup company or a consulting firm. They were kind of kicked out of the university. But then they started getting more students, more grants, more publications, more engagement, more impact with their approach. And now the university kind of, it seems like, from what I understand, is, holding them up and saying, we want the whole university to be more like this. So that's a two examples of kind of how a smaller effort might look appealing, to the whole university when they see how successful and a different kind of program and different kind of learning and research that is possible.
Yeah, the drift examples was our second seminar. They explain all the transition thinking, all what they are trying to do, from drift to transformation of the old universities, and was really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, more questions or people that want to share their experience with Jenny? Nuria, you want to ask something? Yeah, please.
Yes, Sandra, just to explain a little bit what is the program about, and also to get your feedback and also the feedback from the audience, and also expect the contributions from people here in the audience. So the idea of the program our approach is more to go to the local entities to raise the relevant challenge. So the idea to trigger all this transformation, because as you mentioned before, Jenny, how we start, not the transformation. So our idea is to identify relevant challenge that happens at the local level. And with this relevant local challenge, to bring together people from industry, people from civil societies, and also to engage academics, to go to the local environment, to exchange knowledge, to participate in the co-creation of the solutions. Well, first, to participate in the identification of the challenge, because also I think that the scientific community also can help to identify the challenge, but also to contribute to the co-creation of the solution and to develop research, innovation directly to provide solutions to this local challenge. So our trigger approach is the local challenge. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you that the local universities, maybe they have the place, they have also the trajectory, they have the urgency to transform, and to also they have the connections, because as we're visiting different universities, we see that the local universities, they are really established some connections with their territory. And to combine all these approaches. So the local challenge, the local universities, but also how to engage scientific community, also from the big ones, to go out from the building, to go out from the big cities, and to go to the local areas and to support the solution of the challenge. So this is our approach, but for that we are building up like a team in the Department of Research and Universities in the Government of Catalonia. We have also a team in the Department of Economics that they are focused on the different transitions, on energy, mobility, food systems. So all together, we're trying to map all the initiatives already existing in the territory, to map all these actors that they want to do some transitions, and to support them on creating these dynamics to work collaboratively. So we are building up all these huge projects, and well, hopefully in 1 year time we can share our experience and all the success, because this initiative has been already done for last year or 2 years ago with some local experiences. And in fact, it's really amazing how the local entities really go together and to solve relevant challenge. So now we're in the place to scale up all this approach with all the universities here in Catalonia.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. So how did this come about, and how is it organized too? So it's a collaborative with multiple universities. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. The idea is to bring all the universities here in Catalonia. So we have 12 universities. Mm-hmm. One are the big ones, this one with historical trajectory. Mm-hmm. Other are more modern ones or more new ones. One are placed on the big cities, other are placed at the local level. So the idea is to create a community between all of them, to exchange knowledge and to support each other in all this transition. And also we want to bring the research centers, because also they have capacity to bring innovation, innovation, so to really play a role in all this game.
Great.
And this is supported also by the economic department of the regional government. So it's not only universities, but also is economic, and is supported as well with European funds on smart specialization. So it's like a different understanding, a different paradigm of smart specialization in Europe, which is the mainstreaming one is more focused on developing clusters of companies or economic sectors. And in the case of Catalonia, they changed this towards addressing local challenges for a group of actors. They call the shared agendas. We can send you more information if you want. And the universities are key actors in all these. In all these.
Yeah, I think here one of the innovation is to work together, universities and with the public policy makers, because then all the innovation they have a translation directly on the public policies.
Yeah. So you're ahead. You're leading the way.
Well, all together we're experimenting, how we move the system.
Yeah, but it also just shows that the policymakers and the government recognizes how important the universities are, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. This is it's in Spain.
Oh,
it's in Spain is unique. It's not happening in other parts of Spain, so it's a very good experience.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. We have more questions, Ferran, in the Q&A or no?
No more questions in the Q&A
No
and no in the chat.
Yeah. So if you agree, yeah, we can finish. Maybe now our Jenny's. I don't know if Jenny, you want to add something or final words?
Yeah, well, just thank you so much for inviting me. And when I move to Ireland, I will be closer. So I hope I can visit and learn more. And, I think this model that you're part of, could be applied in other regions, right? And I'd love to learn more. And have you written about it? Because there's a lot that the rest of the world can learn.
Yeah. We are in the process of writing.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to come visit and meet with some of you in person sometime. And also, if any of you come to Ireland, look me up.
Yeah, more than you're welcome here.
Thank you.
You will be based in Maynooth, no? You mentioned.
Yeah. Just outside Dublin, not far from Dublin.
Dublin.
Yeah.
Okay. So just a quick reminder, the next seminar will be the 14th, 14 de mayo, and this will be the last one of our seminars. It's about how to do transformative innovation policy at the university from Salim Chalela. He's a Colombian policymaker and worked a lot during many years in university management. So this idea of how we can scale up these things into the university system. And it's okay. Nuria, you want to say something or just post the...
No, just thanks a lot, Jenny, for your inspirational talk. It's super nice to see how all this disruptive thinking and how to envision a better future, a better opportunities for universities as well. So thanks a lot for sharing this with us, and thanks everyone for being here. I look forward to attend the next seminar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Adios.
Bye-bye.